Uh, First of all, I welcome you all for this online session for PG, semester 2 on Kamila Shamsie's Broken Verses. Now, this paper has been newly introduced in your syllabus, Asian Literature. And these papers as electives have been introduced because you get an opportunity to listen to the resource persons who have vast experience. And another reason for including this particular these new papers is that when you complete your PG, you have a wide choice for going in for your research also. So in a very short or brief way, I will explain what is actually Asian literature, and then we will straightway start Kamila Shamsie's Broken Verses. Now, what is actually Asian literature? Asian literature is produced in the countries of Asia's regions. Like we have other major categories like African literature, European literature, American literature. Asian literature emerged prominently on the literary scene in the early 20th century. Rabindranath Tagore, who was poet, dramatist, and novelist, was an Indian who became in 1930 the first Asian laureate to receive the Nobel Prize. He is also well known for writing the Indian national anthem, and later other Asian writers won the Nobel Prize in Literature, including Yasunari Kabawata from Japan, Kezoboro Oe again from Japan, V.S. Naipaul, Indian West Indian in 2001. Now, though the term Asian literature eludes a set definition, there are certain common factors and features in the various literature of Asian countries. Now, what does it constitute really? Now, within Asian and predominantly Hindu literature, we find values, moralities, humanity, principles of right human conduct that help human beings live a harmonious life. In a nutshell, I can say that Asian literature is a compendium, collection of ideas where culture, belief, religion, and values collide. This, in our opinion, are of intrinsic values for all of us. Now, Asian literature can be broadly divided into 4 major categories. South Asian literature, which includes Indian literature, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, and Afghanistani. Second category is the South Asian literature, which includes literature from Singaporean, Malaysian, Indonesian. And the third is East Asian literature, which includes Japanese, Korean, and Chinese. And the last is West Asian literature, which includes Persian and Jewish literature. Now, most popular literatures written or translated in English are from East and South Asia. Asians who migrated to America, England, Canada, and other Western countries have also contributed significantly to the global literature. The diaspora writing produced by the writers of Asian descent have achieved a remarkable success. So this is a brief introduction as to what is actually Asian literature. There are some terms for background study also. I will take that up if I get time, or I'll send you the material on those background topics also. Now, what is actually Broken Verses? Broken Verses is written by a Pakistani writer, Kamila Shamsie. Now, as we know the scenario of literature in Pakistan, women literature written in Pakistan is a marginalized entity. Compared to its male counterparts, you can say that female narrators or narratives are on the periphery. Patriarchal ideology is given to Pakistani society, and voicing out their experience in such a stifling atmosphere is daunting and a challenge for women. More so, language is also a foreign language for them, the English. Now, against this backdrop, you can say that Kamila Shamsie succeeded in creating a new feminist assertion out of her characters, and she defied all the norms that were there in Pakistan, and she created new standards for herself. And she also created a place for herself amongst the women writers of Pakistan. Now, Kamila Shamsie's work can be set apart, not only because of the gender, but also because of the position as a British national. Her trajectory of her life makes her a fitted candidate to articulate for the marginalized Pakistani women. She can objectively narrate her experience as an outsider because she has stayed there and then she migrated. So she can have both the experiences also. As a female born in Pakistan in early 1970s, in a culture where girls are expected to become only wives and mothers. They do not have any other role to play. Kamila Shamsi was fortunate as her family background was very good and they supported her, and she received her affluent and literary family already, which included several female writers. Her mother, Muniza Shamsi, and her great aunt, Atiya Hussain. Her international experience also gave her different perspective on her home environment, and this underpins her fiction. She often explores cross-cultural relationships and cultural identity, particularly the burden of the cultural history and family expectations from a woman. Now, we have seen that Kamila Shamsi could write, or she had the uh, freedom to write because she had a great lineage of women writers in her family, and that was very favorable. So she could write literature. Kamila Shamsi, in her first novel, In the City by the Sea, that was the name of the first novel, was shortlisted for the John Llewellyn Rhys Prize, and her second, Salt and Saffron, were her play, one of her plays in Orange list of 21 writers of the 21st century. In 1999, Shamsi received the Prime Minister's Award for Literature in Pakistan. Her third novel, Cartography, explores the strained relationships between soulmates Karim and Rahim, set against the background of ethnic violence. Both Cartography and her novel, which is the next novel, that is Broken Verses, in 2005, have won the Patras Bokhari Award from the Academy of Letters in Pakistan. Her next novel, Burnt Shadows, published in 2009, was shortlisted for Orange Prize for Fiction and won the 2009 UK Muslim Writers Award for Fiction. Her next work, A God in Every Stone, was shortlisted for the 2015 Walter Scott Prize. In 2013, she was included in the Granta list of 20 best young writers. So this is the brief introduction of Kamila Shamsi, and she has to her credit many awards and many, you can say, appreciation to the work that she has done. Now, I'm going to divide my presentation in two parts. First, I will give you the summary of the novel. And one important aspect of Kamila Shamsi's Broken Verses is the relationship between mother and daughter that she has portrayed is very, very important. So the first thing is that I will introduce Broken Verses in the form of summary, so you understand the plot of that particular novel, and then you'll be able to understand the other aspects that are there, that is the mother-daughter relationship in Kamila Shamsi's Broken Verses. Now, Kamila Shamsi's novel, Broken Verses, weaves suspense, politics, and mother-daughter tale into a Karachi-based narrative exploring the universal theme of loss, love, politics, activism, feminism, hope, and trauma. Asmani Inqilab, this is the name of the heroine, who is the protagonist. She's 30-year-old, faces each of the narrative themes as she unpacks the startling mystery surrounding her mother's disappearance 14 years earlier. So all these themes which are there, that is love, loss, politics, feminism, hope, trauma, all these themes surround around the protagonist, whose name is Asmani Inqilab. And she's facing with the trauma because her mother disappeared 14 years earlier. Complicating this disappearance is presumed death of her mother's lover, a famous Pakistani poet who was reportedly beaten to death 2 years earlier by the government henchmen. Shamsie is a multi-award winning writer. In 2005, as I've already said, she has won the award. Now, Asmani Inqilab has never forgotten over the disappearance of her mother, Samina Akram. So the name of her mother is Samina Akram, who has disappeared 14 years ago. Now, who was actually Samina? She was an outspoken activist and she has disappeared 14 years ago. Asmani didn't give it much thought earlier. Samina was a daring, famous activist, and she was in love with a man whom she called the poet. And then he went into exile. Samina would leave her daughter behind to follow him. In fact, Asmani's parents were married for less than a year before her mother fell in love with the poet. Asmani was raised by 4 parents: her mother, her stepmother, her father, and the poet. So these are the 4 parents in her life: her mother, her stepmother, her father, and the poet. Because her mother left her, she abandoned her. And after that, she was looked after by her stepmother and father, and for some time by her mother's lover, who was the poet. However, her mother hasn't been seen or heard from since the poet was beaten to death by the government henchmen 2 years before her disappearance. Rootless, without answers, and suffering from abandonment issues, Asmani moves from job to job in her 30s and single. So you see how her childhood, her background is disturbed, and that results into the trauma and disturbed childhood of Asmani. So because of that, she undergoes suffering and she faces rootlessness because she does not have anything to be firm upon. The ground where she can stay firm or where she can have roots, those roots are not there. That is why she is rootless. And that is why she goes in search of her roots from one job to another, because there is nobody where she can stay for her lifetime. So she's already 30 and she is single. When Asmani takes a job at the first independent TV station in Pakistan, her troubled past soon collides with her troubled present. So she gets a job in a TV station in Pakistan, but her past, that is the background of her life, makes her or troubles come in her life because of the past in the present. She runs into an old friend of her mother's, Shehnaz Sahi, who is a famous actress coming out of retirement. The beautiful Shehnaz gives Asmani letters she received from an anonymous fan. The strange letters are written in a code. However, and though Shehnaz can't crack the code, she remembers that the poet and Samina always wrote to each other in code. Shocked, Asmani takes the letter and on reviewing them, realizes that she can, in fact, remember the code because she learned it in her childhood. Now, when she is working on the Pakistani television, she comes across Shehnaz Saeed. She is a famous actress and she's about to retire. And she tells Asmani that she has got some letters from a fan. And these letters are written in a code language. And she cannot understand that code language. Now here Asmani remembers that her mother and the poet used to communicate through a code language. She's shocked by this, that how can the letters be written now? She takes those letters, reviews them, and realizes that she remembers some of the past things which can crack that particular code. One more thing she comes to know is that she realizes that these letters are written recently, suggesting that they are not only from the poet, but he is still alive. Now she realizes one thing, that these letters are written at present, which suggests the thing that the poet is not dead. He is alive. And another thing which she believes is that even her mother may be living, she is not dead. This discovery unpends Asmani's world. If the poet has been held captive this entire time, she wonders if her mother might also be found. With a few clues, Asmani sets out to find the truth surrounding her mother's disappearance. So she believes one thing, that if the poet is living, it means that her mother, who had disappeared 14 years ago, even she must be alive. So she has a strong desire to meet her mother. And therefore, she has certain clues. And with the help of those clues, she sets on, you can say, a mission where she wants to find out her mother or the truth which is surrounding the disappearance of her mother. Broken Verses is a poignant mother-daughter tale, and Asmani finds herself struggling memories from an abnormal childhood. Throughout, the narrative also touches on love with mutual attraction budding between Asmani and Shehnaz's son. Now, as I told you earlier, that this novel is very, very important from the point of view of mother-daughter relationship. And in this also, if you see an element of love, there is a mutual attraction between Asmani and Shehnaz's son, the actress whom Asmani had met. Many critics also praise the political intrigue in Broken Verses because it works as a backdrop to the entire narrative but does not overshadow other themes. Now, this novel is been praised by a lot of critics because it is written very beautifully, especially the mother-daughter relationship. But it also deals with the political things or the events that are taking place in Pakistan during that particular time. It was during the rule of Ziaul Haq. And though the political aspect is taken into consideration, but the politics does not overshadow the novel, but the other themes are also done justice with. And the political backdrop which is there enters on a critique of America, as well as a fear of fundamentalism making inroads into Pakistan government. Overall, Shamsi's narrative is touching. Exploration of modern day Pakistan effectively addresses forgiveness, politics, parent-child relation, and women rights. Now, these are the things which were never dealt in the Pakistani writers. It also brings forth the new woman of Pakistan who fights for the rights or who is aware of the rights and who wants to make a place for herself in the modern day Pakistan. Now, there are many themes, as I said. You have national theme, you have socio-political, cultural themes, aspects which are there. And it discusses also one of the important aspects of the educated women in Pakistan. What is the place of the educated women in Pakistan? And this is portrayed through two characters. One is the mother of Asmani and Asmani herself, and a third minor character, that is Shehnaz, who is the actress in the Broken Verses. Now, as I have already told, that Asmani was left abandoned by her mother, and her parents were divorced, as her mother was in love with an activist and the poet. And this relationship of mother, which was there with Asmani, never blossomed because she lost her mother, or she was abandoned when she was very, very young, when she was on the stage of adolescence, when she needed her mother the most. Now her father remarried a woman named Bhima, and she had a daughter called Rabina. That was the second daughter of Asmani's father. Now Asmani had a very good rapport with her stepmother and Rabina. Now Rabina, who is there, she loves Asmani, and they both are both share a very good sister relationship with each other. Now this poet who is there suggests, as I've said, that there are clues that he is alive. And after her mother's disappearance, Asmani goes for searching, and she waited for the call, and she waited that her mother would return. And both these female who are there, Shehnaz Saeed and Asmani's mother Samina, play a very, very important role in the life of Asmani. The real life story of Samina has molded into a real life story of Shahnaz Saeed, and Asmani visualizes the woman disappearing from de-embarking a plane in Karachi, who had disappeared from Pakistan long, long ago, leaving her only child. Now, coming to the mother-daughter relationship, we can say that Asmani feels that her mother did not love her because of the traumatic situation which she was in, and she feels or she doubts that she is not the product of love of her parents. She doubted her own conception, but for the world at large, she is the daughter of Samina. Her face looked similar, and women confused her from her mother Samina, the activist. They said that her eyes were exactly like her mother. Samina's skill for word usage, language, and voice was also inherited by Asmani, and people commented on that also. Her father also found a lot of resemblance, and sometimes he was amazed and remarked that there is so much of her in you, your voice, your eyes, your quickness with language, and it reminds me of Samaina. I loved that girl who stole my heart. Shehnaz Saeed, her mother's friend, also saw the reflection of Samina in her. Now, this is actually the bond of mother and daughter that is there. In this novel, as we have already said, that the childhood of Asmani was very, very traumatic, but she had the yearning of meeting her mother. And many times she remarked, and she used to say that I have spent my whole life missing Mama. So this longing, yearning is seen in broken verses throughout. Now again, she says that after my mother disappeared, I used to see her everywhere, not just in the form of other women, but in empty spaces too. This is again the bond, the love that is shared by a mother and daughter. The umbilical cord which is there, though it is broken at the time of birth, but the umbilical cord between mother and daughter remains throughout till the end of both the life of mother and the daughter. So this bonding which was there in infancy with her mother, although we can say that boys may break up this particular bond, but daughters do not break this bond. They stay with their mother throughout their life. Now, Asmani sometimes reveals through her dialogues that you had your moments, Mama. I will give you that. In those, what was it? 10 years out of the first 70 of my life, you were absent in one way or the other. You had your moments. So, this complaint she always had for her mother, that she had her moments with the poet, but in the particular time when she needed her mother the most, she was not there in her life. So that vacuum which was there was always felt, that insecurity which she felt was always there in her life. Now, sometimes because of that, she used to ponder how much Samina remembered the persona, what was reality, what was myth, and what was false or what was Asmani's creation. Now, Asmani, who was there, her name was also unusual. Her name was Asmani Inqilab. See, whenever a writer writes something, or even the names that a writer gives, it is always having something hidden into it, because many things are suggested through names also. Now, her unusual name, Asmani Inqilab, it was also mother's only precious endowment. And Asmani has fond memories of how her mother chose her name. She says that my mother's choice, the name, my mother had made all the important choices regarding my early life. The only thing she left to dad and Bima was the actual business of raising me. So see how much regret she has. in her life. That all the decisions were made by her mother earlier, but the most important aspect was that to nurture her, to bring her up, was left to her stepmother and her father. So, what is the meaning of Asmani? Asmani Inqilab means celestial revolution. Such a name never really admits the notion of childhood. But Bhima used to always whisper in her ear, Azure. Asmani can also mean Azure and Azure revolution, like Picasso's blue period. She'd say without the blue. Then she used to say that I too am of the sky. My mother named me. And she had that pride that her mother named her Asmani. Asmani means the sky, it is infinite. So she wanted to reach to her mother and hoping that her mother would come back sometime or the other. Now this mystery is gradually unfolded with Shehnaz Saeed and her dad's help, and she is acquainted that how her mother went into severe depression after the poet's death, and she had a disturbed, you can say, life after that. And after a very disturbing night, Rabina asked for Bima's help. And instead of Bima, her dad arrived. He made her aware of some acrimonious truths about her mother and her disappearance. Unable to face this truth, she literally threw her father out. So she could not bear to have the truth of her life. Now Rabina tries to pacify them. Even though Asmani loved her mother, she was aware of the faults, whatever faults she had. She knew that she had done injustice to Bima, her surrogate mother who had looked after her. Now, we can say that this particular novel, Broken Verses, is a memorable experience, and it handles a lot of relationships, which are the human bonds which are there in human life, like the husband-wife relationship, the father-daughter relationship, the mother-daughter, mother-son, and sibling. And the novelist acquaints us of all these relationships which are there. And we see that though Asmani is estranged from her mother, her father is a source of support for her, strength for her, and her father always stands by her, and he is always there. Like her, he too was not regret this fact that why she left, why she went away. Now, for the first time, we can say that the father-daughter, that means Asmani and father, were close. And she's very spontaneous, and she says that, I would like to know. She missed her mother and cried for her death. Her father, an able counselor, resulted in her catharsis and pent-up emotions. And this role her father unknowingly accepted in the guise of mother. So her father becomes her mother. And the insight that had developed in her own relationship with her mother equipped her to counsel Shehnaz and urge her to forgive her son. Even there were some, you can say, disturbances in the life of Shehnaz and her son. And Asmani was very close to her son. So she tells and counsels Shehnaz that she should forgive her son, because the estrangement that she had experienced should not be experienced by her son. And her advice to Shehnaz shows how well she has understood the relationship of a mother-daughter, mother-son. She simply said that she could not forgive it, but Shehnaz should, as you are his mother. That changes everything. That really sounded like a beginning for Asmani. Bima. So whatever relationship she has, Bima and Asmani, Bima, Rabia, Asmani, dad, Asmani and Rabia, and Shehnaz is her son. So Shamsi's handling of human relationship and her characterization is very, very beautifully. You have a beautiful canvas of relationships in the novel, The Broken Verses. And these relationships are not guided by social norms, but they are guided by the emotions, the feelings, and the sentiments which are there, which are very, very valuable for the people who value these relationships. So it is indeed a very beautiful novel which brings about a canvas of relationships, and the major character Asmani is very, very beautifully portrayed by Kamila Shamsie. So I hope you have enjoyed this, and I would like to advise that you should read this particular novel, Broken Verses, and then only you'll be able to enjoy the literature that is there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving such a detailed description of the novel. Madam has covered the plot, the characters, and the main themes of this particular novel. On behalf of both the institutions and the students, I express humble thankfulness to madam. Thank you so much.